All right, y'all. Today we are going to talk about how to clean your Rapidograph pen. So Rapidograph pens come from many different brands. I have a Kohinoor pen right now, but regardless of whatever brand of Rapidograph that you have, they'll be pretty similar, so this should work for any pen. Before we clean this, I'm going to show you how to take your pen apart so that you can see all the different parts that you will need to clean. So first we are going to remove the cap, and I am taking apart a clean pen so that you can see all of the different little pieces, and then afterwards we'll take a pen apart that is a little bit dirty so that I can show you how to clean it. Okay, so this is the pen body. And this here, this gray part is the clamp ring. And for most different types of rapidographs, the clamp ring will correspond to the size of the pen. So this isn't uniform across brands, but you can see that in the Kohinoor brand, the gray corresponds to the size 0, which is 0.35 millimeters. This, of course, is our refillable ink cartridge, which, when it's clean, looks like this, nice and transparent. You'll see my dirty pen later that is not nice and clean and transparent, which is why we're doing this video. So this is the actual pen body, and in order to take this apart, we are going to use a tool. So when you get your Rapidograph, it will come with this strange looking little wheel, and that is what we are going to use to take this apart. So we're going to slip it over the pen body. You'll see with the Kohinoor ones, there's another little ring that has the gray marking, and it also has the markings to denote what size it is. And when you slip this on, it should fit neatly on there. And then I'm just going to spin that. And I don't really need this tool anymore. And I can just do this by hand. So once we've removed the body, this is the pen feed or air channel. You'll see it referred to in different ways depending on what brand you have, but they're essentially the same thing. So you will see on these ones, there's a little transparent cap. So that is the feed cap. This is the feed. And you will see that there is a part within the feed that has this very fine tip. So this right here is the weight, and this is the wire. You can see that my wire is a little bit bent, which you do not want. You want to be very careful while you are cleaning your pens and while you are taking them apart, because we don't want to damage that wire. Now, there are some products that you can buy. If you look at the instructions that come with a Kohinoor pen, you'll see that it recommends using this Rapido Ease cleaning solution, which I obviously have tried. This is mine. There's a little bit of ink in it. So you can see it has this gray color. Usually it's a white color. And then that will also come with this squeezy pump that you can connect to your pen to force water and cleaning solution through it. I have found that cleaning pens with just regular household products is more effective, and not only is it more effective, it is much cheaper. So I do not recommend using the cleaning solution. This little guy, it can be useful. I've not found it necessary. I've kept it around in case I need it, but for the most part, I haven't really, because I'm taking my pens apart. I think this is mostly useful if you want to clean your pen without taking it all the way apart. Now, what I recommend cleaning your pen with is just regular old Windex, or in my case, a generic brand of Windex. I will also need some water, and I will need a plastic bag, and for the very delicate parts, I am going to use this bottle cap. So let's take a look at the pen that I need to clean. Just like before, I'm going to take off my pen cap and the pen holder, and you can see that my ink cartridge is entirely black. I have done the thing that I'm not supposed to do, which is leave my pen full of ink for quite a long time. So try not to do this. Try to rinse out your pen between uses. It's fine to let some ink sit in your pen for several days, especially if you're using it repeatedly, so ink is flowing through the pen regularly. But if you know you're not going to use your pen for a little bit, definitely try to clean it out. You probably won't have to take it all the way apart for just regularly rinsing it off, but if you are going to let it sit for a little bit, you might want to do that. All right, so I have my cartridge, and I am going to use this little wheel Now, sometimes if you let your ink dry a little too long, it'll get kind of tough to take apart. So it might take a little extra effort. So this means that my pen is really in need of cleaning. The fact that it was so difficult for me to get it to come apart. All right. So you can see, yes, my feed is very sticky. So sticky, in fact, that I believe the cap of the feed seems to be stuck inside my pen body. So we are really dealing with a pen very much in need of a cleaning. As I mentioned, these are very delicate, small pieces in your pen. So I have got a toothpick, and I'm going to try to very gently press on the feed cap that I believe is in here. Without damaging it. Just try to get it to come out. And if it doesn't, I can clean the pen a little bit and see if it will come out once the ink has been loosened. I really don't want to damage this, so I'm going to try to do that instead of fiddling with this too much. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a solution that is roughly half warm water I want to completely submerge the pen, and then about half of it is going to be Windex. Pour some of that in. That's probably good. All right, so I'm going to take the larger parts of the pen and just stick them in there. I will stick this in there as well, just for now. But since it's so dirty, I might have to stick it in some pure Windex later. So I'm going to seal this up. I'm just going to kind of shake it around a little bit. You can already see that the solution is full of ink. Now for the wire and the weight, because this is so small and so delicate, I want to keep that separate to make sure I do not damage it. And I have a pen cap, and I'm just going to fill that directly with Windex. I'm just going to plop that right in there. This cap might not be quite big enough. Because this cap isn't quite big enough for my wire, I have decided that I'm actually going to transfer that to a small Tupperware container just to make sure that it is fully submerged. Now I'm going to leave these to soak for a few hours. I will come back and decide if I need to repeat the process. All right, it's been about 3 hours, and you can see that I've laid down some more paper towels because this is where it can get pretty messy. I've also drained my inky water out of this bag, and I am going to transfer these into a bag that just has water in it to rinse them off a little bit. Now here's where we get messy. I think I'm going to wipe these down first a little bit. Just try to get as much of that ink water off of them before I transfer them into the fresh water. Obviously that's still going to get pretty messy, but we can mitigate that somewhat. And we can see that my cartridge is already looking much more transparent. Oop. I think that's everything. Nope. Got a whole pen body in here. All right. And I'm also going to take my wire very carefully and put it into some clean water. Shake that around just a little bit. Set that aside. And like I did before, make sure that this is sealed. And just kind of shake that around in there. Really gently, because I don't want to damage anything, but I do want water to move around. All right. So I'm going to set this aside while I start in on trying to clean some of these items. And I will start with the parts that are probably going to be the least dirty, depending on the situation. But, you know, the pen holder is probably not going to be too gummed up with ink. So I'm going to wipe this down, and then I'm going to try to get the interior a little bit with a Q-tip, as much as I can. It doesn't look like there's too much ink down at the bottom. If there was, I might try to find a way to get something down there. And actually, I'm going to take some of this Windex, spray it on there. As you can see, this pen holder, it's still kind of like dull and gray. It's got some like ink remnants on it. I'm just going to wipe it down a little bit with Windex. And that should take care of most of it. You know, it doesn't need to be pure white or anything. It doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as it's clean. All right. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to set this aside to dry. Now I'm going to look at my cap. Sometimes the caps can get pretty messy, but this one doesn't look too bad. Just gonna use this Q-tip in there. Just to like wipe things off. You can see that there is a little bit of ink in there. Not too much that I would worry about it affecting the pen's performance, but I might take a Q-tip that I've dipped in Windex and wipe down the inside of it. Try to get in those ridges if I was really worried about it. You can see how much more of that comes off. Let's see if there's anything down at the bottom that I need to worry about. Looks pretty good. Just going to go in there with some water. And I might actually just drop it into the water here just to rinse it off a little. I don't want to put my pen back together until I know that it's dry. So regardless of how clean I can get it, I'm still going to let this sit out for a while. I like to let them sit out overnight when I'm drying my newly cleaned pens. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. I'm going to take that. This looks pretty good. There we go. Good as new. Set that aside as well. All right. Let's look at this cartridge. This is usually the part that needs the most cleaning. This one actually doesn't look too bad. If you have let your pen go too long without a cleaning, if there was a lot of ink in it when you left it, sometimes it'll build up at the bottom of the cartridge and create this kind of sludge. And sometimes that can take several rinses and soaks with the Windex to get through. This one actually looks pretty good, which I'm surprised by, but it didn't have too much ink in it. It was just kind of coating the sides of the interior of the cartridge, as opposed to really being full of dried ink. But if your cartridge is full of dried ink, no worries. You can just keep repeating this process and trying to scrape out all of the ink with your Q-tips. I'm just going to rinse this off one more time. If I can get all of the air out of it. There we go. Set that aside as well. All right. This part can get pretty dirty also. It's easy to clog. Just gonna wipe off the exterior first before I see how bad the interior is, because this is another piece of the pen, the feed here, the air channel, that sometimes will get ink really gunked up inside of it. And I'm going to wet this Q-tip before I go in there. So you can see that when I stuck my Q-tip all the way in there, it formed this droplet of inky water at the end, which means that it is forcing liquid all the way through the pen, so that's a good sign. It means that the pen is not clogged in the tip area, because if nothing was coming out, it would mean there's dry ink in there, and I would want to soak it again in that case. So what I might want to do is take some water and really soak these Q-tips and try to force as much of the inky water out of here, so you can see that it's like really spraying inky water everywhere. So I want to get all of that out of the pen, and I might have to soak it again. But ideally, when I finish doing this, clear water will come out. It just looks like there's a whole lot of ink still in there. I'm going to set this aside for now. Looks like I may have to soak that one a little bit more. So I'm going to finish looking at the rest of it. And of course, when we started this, this was our big issue, was that the feed cap appeared to be stuck inside of the pen body. So let's see if we can get that out. Go back in here with a toothpick again, very gently slide out the cap. So you can see that came out pretty easily because the ink that was making it stuck in there was loosened, and you can see the buildup of dried ink that's on the outside of it. So let's see if I can wipe some of that off. And you can see it is coming off in chunks. So that might be what it looks like if you are digging heaps of dried ink out of your cartridge, if you have a lot of ink in there. Just going to wipe that down, and I'll probably end up soaking this as well, along with the feed. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before with the feed, now with this pen body. Soak my Q-tip in water there, just in case there's like a lot of ink there. I don't want it to get stuck on anything and just end up leaving a bunch of Q-tip bits behind. And you can see how inky it still is in there. So I'm going to get as much of this ink off of these remaining parts of the pen as I can, and then I am going to soak them again. It looks like we've gotten a lot of the ink off of this. It's not looking too bad, but I'll give it another soak anyway, just because I know that if there was so much dried ink in there that the feed cap was stuck, there's probably some left in there. Just gonna try this once more. Yeah, I still got pretty inky water in there. It's starting to get a little bit more clear. But just for good measure, let's give these pieces a second soak. But before we do that, let's check on our weight and wire. This end of the weight is usually the part that can get the inkiest. It sits in the base of the feed cap. And especially if you store your pens sitting vertical up, that's where the ink is going to collect. This actually looks pretty clean. So I am going to take a small container, since I only have small parts of my pen, and put those remaining parts that I think need a second soak in there. Gonna mix some water in here. Swishing this around kind of like a cocktail or glass of wine, although you definitely do not want to drink this. It's not advised. So you can already see some little bits of ink coming off there. So I'll come back in a little bit and we'll see if we can't get these just a little bit cleaner. Okay, so it's been about 3 hours and I'm gonna see how these pen parts are doing. I am going to again take these out of the Windex solution and rinse them out with water, and you can already see that the feed cap there is nearly completely clean. So that second soak did a lot. All right, let's see. We can. That's our pen body. And the feed. There we go. All right, I'm going to set that aside. And I'm just going to swish this around a little again, just to get some water moving through it. Try to rinse that out as best I can, make sure there's no air bubbles or anything. And then I am just going to take this cap out first, dry it off a little bit. And yeah, it was so caked with ink that it was stuck inside of the pen body, and now it's almost as good as new, practically spotless. All right, let's take that pen body, and just like before, I'm going to wipe it down on the inside, and I might take some water just to get the Q-tip a little bit wet. Really work it into some nooks and crannies. And yeah, we can see that there's not a whole lot of ink left in there. And get the outside as well. Yeah, I think we can call that clean. Set that aside with the other parts. And this is probably going to be where we see the most residual ink, because it has such a small little part where ink can build up right in the little feed where the wire sits. So let's see what we got in there. All right, so our water that's coming through is much cleaner than before. It's not totally clear. You can see that that ink that is coming out is sort of flaky, because it's still dried out ink. You can also see that we've got some bubbles coming out of there, so we have a little bit of air trapped inside. I'm starting to get pretty clean Q-tips coming out of there. I really want to make sure that I try to get every potential spot where there could be ink. If I'm going to go through this process cleaning out my pens, as you can see, it's a bit time consuming, a bit arduous. I want to make sure I really clean my pens. And the other thing is I want to make sure that I'm really getting water through there, because I don't want leftover Windex in there either. I really want to make sure that that little passage is clean. Even get some water in there. Yeah, so you can see these Q-tips are like pretty much clean. Just gonna do this once more for good measure. And you can see the droplets coming out. They're also pretty much clear, if that's in focus even. And I'll get the outside of it as well. and make sure that you don't have any ink in the threading here. That all right, I think that we have a clean pen. So now I'm going to lay this out to dry because I don't want any water trapped in there. I'm going to put together a nice clean dry pen. So I'm going to let it sit out even more. I want to make sure that I keep everything together. I highly recommend, if you're cleaning more than one pen at the same time, to keep the weight and wire and the clamp ring together, because the ring does indicate the size, and you don't want to get your wires mixed up and then try to thread it through the wrong feed. So if you are cleaning more than one pen at the same time, that's a good way to make sure you don't get anything mixed up. So I'm just going to let these sit and dry for a little while. At least I would give them a few hours. So I'll probably check back on these in a little bit and see if they're dry enough to put back together. All right, so I've let my pen sit out to dry overnight, and now I'm just going to reassemble it. So I will take the feed and very delicately, because I don't want to damage the wire, just slide this through. My hands are always shaky in the morning, so perhaps I should have done this in the afternoon. There we go. And then I will secure that in place with the feed cap. And now I can take my pen body, screw that back in. And if I want to make sure that it's tightly on there, I can secure that with this little wheel again. And then I can put back my cartridge and my clamp ring. Screw on the pen holder and the cap. And now I have a nice, clean Rapidograph pen. And if you take care of your pens like this, they will last you forever. And if you're worried because you haven't taken care of your pens, even the most dried out, filthy pen can be resurrected through this process. So there you go.